You're live.
We made it.
Body Hump Day again. We're
One
back.
more week.
One more. Yeah. Dude, I feel like these days you just got to be thankful for every chance you get, right? It's like, oh, I guess we're doing this again.
Oh, yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, the times that we had tried to do this before, we would do like one and then we would just sort of forget. It's like,
Right.
well, we said
Oh,
everything we wanted to say, And
yeah.
then,
But not even.
uh, yeah, but this time we seem to be mostly weekly-ish,
Yeah.
close
Yep.
enough.
Ish. Yep. And pretty
Yeah.
much every Wednesday, sometimes we move it around, but we can do whatever we want. This is
Yeah,
our
I've been
podcast.
traveling a lot. So we did it one week while I was in Ireland. That was
Right.
pretty fun.
Yep.
And now I'm here in East Texas at our parents' place, drinking
And you had,
Dad's amazing coffee, by the way.
yeah, I'm drinking my amazing Nespresso out of my
Oh
Donald
no.
Trump mug. I don't know if you can see that.
Total disaster.
Total
Everyone
disaster.
agrees, believe me.
Everyone agrees, believe me. Yeah,
Excellent.
Loa got this for me for Father's Day. So knowing what a huge Trump fan I am.
Oh yes. Yes, you definitely are.
Yeah. Well, dude, we got a lot to talk about today. I've got 3 potential topics that we could get into. But first, I give
Okay.
the floor to you. What do you want to talk about?
I'm game for your stuff. I figured we'd probably need to talk about Harris's vice presidential pick. So that's
course.
kind of new.
Yep. That's
Um,
number one on my
there was it seems like there's been some international stock market weirdness, some escalation in the Middle East, which turns out to have de-escalated slightly. Like we were starting to think maybe World War III is about to
Let's
crank
go.
up, but yeah, it looks like maybe that's not happening. So Olympics has been kind of fun to watch.
That's on my list too.
So
Yep.
okay, all right. Well, here let's go with your list. You've got 3 things. Let's do them.
Well, we'll see where the conversation takes us. So maybe we get to all 3, or maybe we get sidetracked. That's we should subtitle this the ADD podcast. And squirrel.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
What's that
for an
over
hour.
there? Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about the VP pick. What are your thoughts?
So, it was a little weird to me. Mainly because, yeah. Well, I found. Sorry, it's just such a great word. And by the way, the guy that she picked
this year, yeah,
the guy that she picked was the guy that started the weird thing. So I don't know if it was a reward for his great meme ability or what. But
that was one of the theories
I was
heard too.
It's like, hey, if you can meme this good, But then I think the right had done a fun job with because the left has. So the right has plenty of stuff that you could make fun of,
Absolutely.
Bubba out there, with his beer gut and his shotgun, and his immigrants go home kind of stuff. It's like, well, that's kind of funny.
I don't even think that's really that funny. It's not the voters that make fun of; it's the policies they put out. But
well, but if you look at the left, some of the left's voters. So we talked about this at one point that. If the more mental illness you have, the greater the likelihood that you vote Democrat. There's actually a pretty strong correlation there. I don't know why that is. I mean, you could maybe it's because their healthcare policies are more, or maybe they're considered more compassionate. I don't know.
Sure.
But it definitely, the Democrats are the party of mental illness. And so they'll be like, oh, they'll have a picture of some TikTok person who's dressed up in a fox costume, and they're doing something that's pixelated out, and it's like, and JD Vance is weird, it's like, oh, you think we're weird, let me show you the real weird people, mental illness party. So that's kind of I don't know if that one backfired or not. It's good for entertainment, but I don't know. I thought that she would pick someone that would make her appear more moderate, because for the longest time she'd had this reputation as the most liberal senator.
She won a designation for that. Yeah, she got
designation. Yeah. And she was very proud of that. I mean, California senator. That's very popular over there. So, I mean, great. Like that's wear that with pride. But then it's like, well, for the general election, you're going to have to win over a lot of people. So pick someone that's kind of moderate that would be like, see, look, it's not that. We're not crazy. Like,
Right.
yeah, we have. When I'm trying to represent California, of course, I'm going to propose things that are more in line with California's values. But this is about America, like that kind of stuff. And she picked someone who, as far as the record, was pretty much in the same category. So I was surprised, but maybe like doubling down on the left thing
he's just some
is
nice,
smart.
really nice Midwestern dude, that trying to nice out the ticket.
I don't know. The only thing that is a little bit more moderate about him.
Nelia wants to my coffee mug. Here you go.
Oh yeah. Nobody's better at fatherhood than you. If you look at a lot of his positions, they are pretty far left, except for one. He is somewhat gun friendly. He was an NRA member. And so it's not going to be gun friendly like Texas gun friendly, where it's like, let me show you my collection of AR-15s. Like, not that kind of gun friendly, but like, hey, we're not going to come for your hunting rifles. If you want to defend yourself with a revolver, that's fine. Glocks are probably dangerous and shouldn't be allowed, by anyone to have. So that's a little bit to the right of Harris. Harris is kind of like the only people that should be allowed guns or to be protected by guns are government officials. So, she wants to be protected by people with guns, and rich people can, but not you, right? That's something for, right. Where this guy seems to be more like, no, for self-defense, of course, you could have a personal weapon, but it needs to be something that is, wouldn't be something that would have been used by military. So no standard capacity magazines. Probably he'd be in favor of what we call an assault.
No Sherman tanks. Yeah.
Yeah. No bazookas. No, but like as far as stuff that, so like in Texas, he would be considered far left on the gun thing, but compared to Harris, he's further to the right. So that would be,
he's pretty middle of the road.
Probably a little left to center. Because remember, nationally, there's a majority of states that have permitless carry laws. They don't even need permits for more than 50% of the states. And they have a couple states that are, they've never seen a gun restriction that they don't like. So like Maryland's one like that, DC, California. So, he's a little to the left of where the country is, but it's not like it's all the way to the left like Harris. So I think that's the one moderate position I was able to find. I haven't really looked that hard. But he was the second governor to make, declare their state a sanctuary zone for trans children. So like if your parents, like if you're a 14-year-old girl and your parents are against you getting a double mastectomy in order to affirm your gender, you could run away to Minnesota, and that they would sort of help you.
Just to be clear, like they don't. Yeah. There's no state right now, as far as I'm aware, that allows surgeries on children. Drugs, yes, but not.
Oh,
the whole talking point that I heard Megyn Kelly talking about this. These people want to chop body parts out of kids. I mean,
no, it's true.
That's not a thing.
It unfortunately is.
Which state allows you to chop body parts off of children?
I'll have to go look. Now, they'll talk about it as gender affirming care.
Right, but it's medically
and gender affirming surgeries,
but not with surgery, not for children.
Yes,
okay.
I mean, like I've been reading people's memoirs on this issue, and many people have talked about getting double mastectomies at 14, 15, 16 years old. Elective, like it's not because they're at a high risk for breast cancer, where sometimes people will use mastectomies preemptively if you're at extremely high genetic risk. But these are elective as part of gender affirmation.
Right, but not under the age of 18. So I'm just looking here. Even in California, for example, you have to be 18. Well, now you can with parental permission, but without parental permission, you can't. So
correct.
Yeah,
correct. So if, the idea of like
that's in other words, not that I'm in favor of any of that. I'm just saying, what happens, I think, to me, that I find just offensive across the board is when people, and I get, look, we got to sell it. We got to make a bumper sticker out of this, but when you're overly reductive like that, anybody with a couple of brain cells knocking together that goes, really? And then they go online and Google it and they find, oh, that's not even true. It just weakens the entire argument.
Yeah.
Just from my point of view,
Okay. Well, let's be real careful then. So, we'll say, like, if your parents were against you getting a hormone replacement therapy for gender affirmation.
Now that, yes.
Then you could run away to Minnesota, yep, and they would, sort of like the runaway slave thing, like, we're not going to send you back.
But to be super clear, like, if you're living in Minnesota, yeah, and there are a couple other states that do this, and you want hormone therapy and your parents don't approve, not only can you get it, but actually everyone else in the child's life that is in a licensed profession, by the state, they are mandated to help you hide that from your parents.
Yes.
And again, it's the licensing that's an issue, right? Like, obviously a pastor's under no obligation, whatever, but if you're a licensed professional, so doctor, teacher, school counselor, et cetera,
yeah,
they are not only not allowed to counsel you against it, but they are obligated to help you conceal it from your parents.
Yeah.
And,
in fact, if they ask you to wait, it's like, well, why don't you wait a year and see if you still feel the same way? That's considered.
They can be censured, sued, whatever. Yeah.
Oh, it's considered conversion therapy.
Right.
They're trying to stop you from accepting your trans identity. Yeah.
There's one of my favorite phrases, man, I don't know if I'd do that if I was you, you can't even say that. So again,
so that's
to me, that is, and I have a friend who his daughter was going through some things in her life that intersected with a couple of these laws in California. And he was educating me about that, just telling me their story. And it really caused me to kind of go down a rabbit hole of looking into this stuff. And it is shocking.
Amazing.
It's shocking.
Amazing. Yeah.
As a parent, and I mean, it's crazy to me. It's like, okay, now, are there bad parents out there? Are there parents who, are horrible parents, should never have been allowed to be parents in the first place? We can go down and have
oppressive and so on. Of course,
right? And most of us, when we grow up to be adults, we have some issues that we got to work through with how we were parented. That is a universal thing that therapists get paid a lot of money to help people process. I think parents are doing the best they can, but do they do everything right? No, whatever. I mean, we can go down a whole conversation about that. But if there's anybody who is intrinsically motivated to be on, to help their kids and give their kids to parent and mentor and steward their kids to adulthood, let's say, not that everybody has that perspective, but I mean, in general, most of us want to do right by our kids. And it's like to say, oh, they're the one group of people that we
can't let them know.
Absolutely do not want to let them know. And that is just nuts to me.
Well, I think it makes really good sense if you're part of the sort of childcare ecosystem, where it's like what the parents really should be doing is providing economic value to the system, right? They should be having jobs. They should be working,
paying their taxes
as much as possible,
and letting professionals handle this, right?
Let the professional, because the professional. I mean, did you take classes in childcare? No, you did not. But these professionals did, and so your children would be better off if you had the least possible involvement, and because who knows what weird prejudices or issues that you're going to pass on to them.
Frankly, I know,
and we need to
actually happy to not be involved in the conversation. It's like, oh,
sure, and that's probably better for them, right. Especially since we need to make sure that those children grow up to be good economic units as well. And so it's like, hey, let us do that. And so then, it kind of makes sense that the parents should not be involved. It's like, I don't know. It's a little weird, but yeah. So the governor,
I like the way that you're framing it, because it's not like, look, I mean, at the end of the day, do I think that's, I mean, I can put a whole bunch of labels on that: crazy, wrong, not cool, whatever, objectionable to say the least.
No.
However, I mean, whatever, it's out there, it's an idea, so the voters can decide, whether they think that's a good idea or not. I personally think that's a horrible idea, and I don't, I don't think that flies. Again, if people that are against that or think that that's crazy, right, or object to it in whatever way, right, to put whatever, if they're more articulate about how they explain the situation, like if my friend who kind of got me curious about this a year ago, if he had gone into the conversation spouting these bumper stickers that, Megyn Kelly, Charlie Kirk, whoever you want is out there throwing at, I would have just tuned him out and been like, dude, what are you, a transphobe? I mean, that would have been my knee-jerk reaction, just because it's like, this sounds hateful, this sounds ridiculous. Like, internally, there's nobody running for office that's like, let's go murder babies, let's go chop body parts off. That's not what they're saying. So you can characterize it however you want. Nobody buys that. I mean, everybody listens to that and it just bounces off like, okay, here's somebody else, screaming nonsense. But when you crank it down and go, this is what we went through, this is how this actually works in real life, this is what is actually not permitted, like not even permitted, people start to go, wait a minute, that's not right. Right? I mean, 90% of the people I know go, nah, I don't know about that, and that is a much more persuasive, it's not even persuasive, it's just like you're informing people and people can have their own reaction to it and go, no, you know what, I don't want that. And the way that they're communicating this is so over the top that it I don't know, it's not useful. I mean, it's whatever, maybe it'll help raise some money from people that already think that way. But as I've made the point over and over on this podcast, like that is not who those people are already voting with you. Like if you're trying to get more people to your side, like calmly explain the situation. And I don't know. Anyway,
one of my favorite rhetorical devices is the opposite of that, which is malicious agreement. So
right. Oh, you want to talk body parts off of kids? I'm in. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's like, someone says, well, what about, the stuff with trans kids? Like, oh, no. Like it's very important that we sterilize all children that have gender confusion, right? Like we don't want to pass that on to the next generation. Like, my gosh, let's get it over with, Or, on the other side where it's like, oh, gun rights, I'm agree, like, why don't we just hand them out? Like, what's the, more guns for everybody,
Everybody should
everybody should have one. Yeah.
I got my 5-year-old one for Christmas. He loves
it. Yeah, I know. It's great. And you're like, no. Malicious agreement.
Yeah, that's good. I need to borrow that. That's good.
Yeah. So what's your take on Minnesota, the governor pick as the vice president?
So outside his policy views.
Yeah, sure.
What are your other thoughts about him? Like just as a counterpoint, or
I think
augmentation.
So the very few things that I've seen from him since haven't really followed Minnesota politics. I've been trying to catch up a little bit.
Dude, nobody has. Like this guy skyrocketed to national prominence out of nowhere.
Yeah.
From that one, from that one interview, really,
Which kind of makes me wonder if how far down on the list he was. Like, I wonder if she's offering you to be like, no.
Well, it makes me wonder, like how much of this is just a complete, like, I mean, think about the fact that, a couple months ago, everybody was like, Kamala, who? Like, no, of course she wouldn't be president. That's ridiculous,
Right.
And then this guy, nobody even knew who he was. And then within a few weeks, she's the savior of America. And thank God, that we have the opportunity to vote for such an amazing human being.
Oh, and then so inspiring.
And this guy who nobody knew who the hell he was.
He's also inspiring. I'm with her.
Great. I'm fired up about this ticket. It's amazing. I'm like, what?
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like does nobody stop and think, like, wait a minute. And again,
who are these people?
Whatever. I mean, the ticket's been presented. Now it deserves some examination. But just before I start examining it, I'm like, what the? Are you serious? Like,
no. See, that's the thing is that, like, we're seeing the full.
a basket. It's like Hunger Games. Like, oh, let's just do a raffle.
Just pick these people.
Yeah, just pick these people. They'll do.
I think. I mean, we've talked a little bit here on this podcast. My theory about the blob or whatever. But I think the blob has selected their people, and so then all the blob gets behind it. And so that's people who.
It's so funny. I would have made fun, and I have made fun of you for saying that kind of thing in the past. And I'm just like, how can
now you're watching it? Here it is.
You were right. I was wrong.
I mean, at least I was right in a hilarious way. Yeah. At least we can laugh about it. Right?
Watch this app. This is crazy. Just nuts.
Well, and we'll see. I think it'll be interesting. In one sense, I don't think his policy stuff matters that much. Well, and I don't even think, because I don't think that he or she is going to be in charge. I think it's going to be kind of like. So I remember we were talking about how the whole point of the Biden presidency is that he's not in charge of anything. It's that the adults in the room are taking care of things. So, for instance, right now.
You go change your diaper, we'll take care of this.
Yeah, right now, it looks like for a minute there, we have an ironclad commitment to attack anybody that attacks Israel, which is fine. I mean, it's a foreign policy position, it's a military position, whatever. I'm not talking about the merits of that. But you have to ask, who's making that decision? Because it's not Biden. Is it Lloyd Austin? Is it someone in the DOD? Is it the CIA? I don't know. Is it someone else? Is it some shadowy figure? And the thing is that it doesn't matter because it's the blob. The blob has decided we are backing Israel by 100%.
Again, it's just like what I was talking about last week. I don't know any of the answers to that question, but one thing I do know is that I know who it's not. It's not the American people either.
Yes, that's true.
And
that's true, because they can't be trusted with this. They can't be trusted with it. And so if Kamala gets into office, all of those same people will still be in charge, right? So this isn't, and because also, she doesn't care about this stuff. How much has she done as vice president? She does nothing. As far as we can tell, she does nothing.
Well, and also it's like the voters have no input into this ticket. I mean, none of these people stood for. I mean, I guess you could say she stood for an election on Biden's ticket, as a VP, but as both campaigns have now said, which is, it was crazy when, not to segue, but when everybody was piling on JD Vance last week about all these dumb things that he said, which he's had his share of dumb things that he said. And and now all four of these people have really dumb things that they've said. So we pile on oh my God, this person said something dumb. It's dude, please. There's a basket of quotes from all four of you people. But anyway,
get in line.
Yeah, he said some dumb things. Everybody's piling on, and everybody's like, "Oh, I bet Trump's regretting this," and da da da. And then Trump comes out and he's defending him, and it's like, dude, this is a horrible place for the presidential candidate to be, where he's defending his VP pick. It's horrible. And then Trump put on Truth Social a few days ago. I don't know if you saw it, but he was like, "Look, vice presidents are completely inconsequential on most things." I was like, dude, that's a raving defense right there. It's like, oh, you don't like him? Well, hey, it doesn't matter because the vice president doesn't do anything. It's like that's not a deep-throated, full-throated endorsement by any means. But however, whatever. I mean, he had to. But now the other side saying the same thing too. It's almost like, dude, let's just go ahead and extend that. The vice presidential candidate and the presidential candidate don't matter, because you guys aren't pulling the strings on this stuff, and it's not even the voters don't even have you're not even creating the illusion that they have something to say about it. I mean, it's literally just. And I have more thoughts on that whole dynamic anyway. I don't know if you saw this guy from what state is he from? I think it's Maryland. There's a senator from Maryland that went on the record last week. I don't know whether it was live or whether they picked this quote up from a year ago, where he's like, "Oh yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, if Trump wins and those votes are sent to the Senate and the House to ratify the Electoral College vote, I mean, we have to honor the 14th Amendment. He's not eligible to be president, and so we're just going to have to not certify that result. And I guess that'll mean civil war, but what can you do?" And I'm like.
And did you remember a couple weeks ago, and you asked for my prediction about the election? I said we're going to see Stop the Steal, but in reverse, where it's like, in order, because this guy, Trump refused to respect the transition of power, we have no choice but to not respect the transition of power, right. You know, right. And we'll stop the steal all over again, but this time it'll work. Like I said, I think it'll work this time.
And part of me also,
yeah,
all of this is just complete kabuki, like complete kabuki theater. I mean, and you know, maybe, I mean, last, you know, somebody was talking to me a couple of days ago, and they were like, "Oh, aren't you worried about this and that?" I'm like, "Look, dude," again, on the record, I am not a Trump fan. I don't like Trump. Didn't vote for him last time. I think he is dangerous, truly, right? More dangerous than these people. I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, until the events of these last few weeks, I would have been like, dude, there's not an individual who's more dangerous to the system. I'm not saying he wouldn't be good economically, any number of other things, but he just anyway, I digress. I'm like, but look, he was president before. He didn't tear down the whole thing. I mean, he made some unpopular choices, but I mean, all the people he appointed were, you know, run of the mill, you know, fine people. I mean, I wasn't a John Bolton fan before. I'm not a John Bolton fan now, right? Like, you'd be appointed. These people have all been around, right? Now, if he gets in this time, you can bet that he's not bringing any of those. I mean, like, he's going to pick like complete outsiders. I mean, just obviously, he now kind of has figured out, like, oh, dude, like these people. And not saying that I want his policies implemented, just saying, like, I mean, he's going to make sure like his policies get implemented this time, because he bring his own people in and tear things to pieces. So that's why I think that's somewhat destabilizing, let's say, not to put too pejorative a label on it, but there's an argument to be made that, hey, that's exactly what we need, because the people running things now are completely unresponsive. And you're right. Who knows who they are? So you can't even say, oh, Biden, dude, whatever you're talking about. Like, that guy had nothing to do with any of these plans at all. Joe's not in some back room cutting deals, you know, like, oh, he's the greatest president. I mean, whoever
sharp as a tack,
whatever team has negotiated these different deals, right?
Yeah.
Yes, they have been extremely productive in their agenda, whoever they are, you know. But
yeah,
anyway.
And it's not like, the thing is that it's not even like those people. So, like, if we're talking about defense stuff, it would be who, you know, Anthony Blinken, Lloyd Austin, some of these folks. But they're not even. It's not even like they're the politician. Like, they represent interests from, you know, other interests. Like, Lloyd Austin used to be what, the president of Raytheon or something. Like, he's just part of the military-industrial complex. So it's not like, oh, I'm here to serve the American people. It's like, no, you're there to serve the military-industrial complex as their arm. So it's not even like we can haul someone up and be like, okay, what were you thinking? Like, why did you do this?
Right.
Because they're not doing it for us anyway. They're doing it for whatever powers they serve.
My thoughts on this pick were, initially when it first came out, and I was intentionally not paying any attention to the Veep stakes or whatever you want to call it. Like, we're down to the short list.
Well, it's a lot of noise.
Yeah,
there's nothing to see. Yeah.
I'll wait until they announce. So then they announce this guy, and I'm like, okay, who is he, right? And to me, like, Tim Walz. Sorry, I had to look up his name. Who is he again? Tim Walz, right?
Is it so? Hey, serious question: is it Walz or Walz? How do you pronounce his name?
It's Walz.
Right, but does he pronounce Waltz or Walz or Walz? Do you know?
Walz. Tim Walz.
Like, from the windows to the walls.
To the walls. Let the
walls. Okay.
What? Okay. So
I just don't want to get it wrong.
Right? There's a YouTube video, how to pronounce Tim Walz correctly. I'll just put that in the comments here for all of you.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Want to know? Here's how you pronounce Tim Walz.
Here you go.
So so I go look him up, and initially I'm like, okay, I did know who Josh Shapiro was. And I did know who Mark, the astronaut guy. I knew
Kelly.
Kelly.
He's famous Arizona senator.
Yeah. And to me, like, okay, if I put my Democrat hat on, which I'm not a Democrat.
But we can just imagine.
My registered independent take that off and put my Democrat hat on, I would have thought that was either one of those would have been much saner choices. And really, out of the two of those,
Kelly would have given some real star power. I mean, astronaut. I think he would have been the strongest possible choice.
Well, and also like we can't do an alternate timeline, but whatever alternate universe there is where those guys got picked, right? The right wing would be having the exact same talking points. So most liberal pick ever, blah blah blah. Like it was so funny. I was listening to Shapiro.
Shapiro's a moderate,
but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like I can't remember who. Oh, it was Dan Bongino. So Bongino had a podcast going, and he was like, no, I don't like either of these people, and they're flaming liberals too. But blah blah blah. Right. But I'm fairly sure that Shapiro, Bill O'Reilly, whoever, Hannity, the entire right wing echo chamber, whoever was picked was like, oh, this is the most. They would be tearing them to pieces. It's the same script, just sub out the name and here you go. Right. Now they wouldn't have the same things to pick on them about, but they would have other things, and they would blow them up into monumental disasters. Right.
Interesting. Okay.
In my opinion, okay. Just like, look, JD Vance is not he's not the worst thing ever, right? But look at the left wing media outlets is all like he's a psychopath, sure. Right? So, sure. And they'll do that to whoever. Like either side will do that to whoever. Oh my God, you can't hire this guy; he's a Nazi. Oh, you can't hire them; he's a communist, right? So it's okay. That's all I'm saying. However,
the usual suspects,
right? Round up the usual suspects. So Shapiro, that's a great movie. Shapiro would have, to me, Pennsylvania is the whole ball game. It was the ball game in 2016. It was not the whole ball game last time, but certainly without it, Biden wouldn't have won. And then this time, like you're not going to get neither candidate's going to win the White House without winning Pennsylvania. So to me, I don't see why you wouldn't have gone. Now, both of them are similarly popular in their state. So I think Walz has like a 58% approval rating. Shapiro had a 63% approval rating in their state, roughly the same, 6 out of 10 people. But I think what sank Shapiro's chances, and I've heard multiple commentators on the left say this, is that he was Jewish. And not because we don't like Jewish
people. That can't be the right.
I'm telling you. So
really?
And it's not me spinning a conspiracy theory. These are prominent voices on the left that have been saying that what really torpedoed him is you have this huge rising movement on the left that is literally pro-Hamas, right? And
the Free Palestine people.
It's one thing to be, for me personally, I am not a fan of Israel's settlement policy. I do think they are intentionally provoking the situation over there. I am not in favor of tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians, children getting bombed and massacred by the IDF. I mean, that is happening, and you can call it collateral damage, whatever you want to call it. It's still human beings that have been killed because of this military action in way out of proportion numbers. So I am no fan of the way Israel is prosecuting this. Let's just call it a war. That's what it is. Okay. However, I'm no way pro-Hamas. I think it's very reasonable for reasonable people to say, look, the way you're doing that is messed up. Whatever. And maybe it's not.
Which sucks because I feel like you should have the right to do something against these people who have been
let's face
aggressors to you as well.
Every country as a sovereign nation has the right to do whatever they want. Vladimir Putin wants to invade another country. He can do whatever he wants. He's the head of Russia. If he can mobilize the military, then he can do whatever he wants. Right. And people from the outside can be upset about it or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, okay, well, that's my right. Okay. But Mom always used to tell us, look, right away when we were driving, I remember learning how to drive. Mom was like, look, right away is not something you take. It's something that you give. You give the right of way, right? Because if you insist on taking the right of way, then you get into an accident. That's what you could say. Oh, but I was right, and you're also dead. So, like, right?
Yeah. How did it help you being right?
He died being right. Which, by the way, oh man, I got to tell you something. Remind me about that. Being right and being dead. Just remind me. Okay. So anyway, the if you are a nation like Israel, we'll just pick on Israel because why not? We're talking about you, Israel. You are a client state, okay? You are not a independent nation that exists without anybody else's help, okay? We are, right? You could say the EU is, right? I mean, as a conglomerate, Britain is, right? Like they're not asking, they're not getting foreign aid, right? Israel just depends on us. If we say, hey, look, we're not going to fund you anymore. We're not going to give you weapons anymore. We're not going to give you training anymore, ammunition, nuclear, we're not going to do any of that. That they're gone. Mm-hmm. Okay. So they depend on really, we're their biggest sponsor. I'm not saying they don't have other supporters around the world, but I mean, we are without question the numbers. We give them more. So we're supporting them. So we do have a say in what they do. We do. And whether they like it or not, if they don't like it, they can say, hey, keep your money. We're doing what we want. Fine. Right. I mean, Iran's been doing that. North Korea's been doing that for decades. Right. Works out great. But go for it. Right. And nobody tells Iran what to do. Nobody tells North Korea what to do because they give the world the middle finger. Right. And they get what they get. And by some miracle, their people keep submitting to these nuts that run the country. But I mean, dude, that situation can persist for decades. It's good luck. Yeah. Okay. It's not like we don't have the right as Americans. And by the way, since it's my tax dollars going to support you, of course I can protest that. I can say whatever I want because
sure.
It's not just I can have an opinion about anything, but specifically about this, just like Ukraine, I can say, look, I don't want my money going over there anymore. Right. So
or you do, or whatever. Okay, that's your choice.
I think that this whole, they're a sovereign nation. How dare we tell them how to, whatever. We're funding their war. So of course we can say, hey, do whatever you want, but we're done. Anyway, that is a perfectly reasonable position to have, in my opinion. My opinion is very reasonable. But this whole pro Hamas, gays for Palestine and all this other kind of stuff you see, to me, that is crazy. Why would you support? I could be pro Palestinians. Of course, I'm for the Palestinian people. Right? There's so many ways to do that are intellectually honest, right? But the whole queer for Palestine thing cracks me up. I have friends that are gay. I'm like, go over there and try being queer in Palestine. See
what happens.
For you.
Go for it.
What are you talking about?
No, there's a weird naivete I think a lot of people have that they kind of imagine that the things that they want are the things that other people want too. And so if you're kind of oppressed in one way, so let's say that if we accept the LGBTQIA2S+ narrative of oppression, and we say, well, if we're oppressed this way, then other people who are also oppressed would be our natural allies. So it's like, hey, all of us oppressed people need to get together. But then it's like, well, no, actually, other people in different parts of the world want sometimes radically different things than what you want, and you don't realize that. So you're just,
in fact, that particular religious ideology wants to oppress people like you. So and by the way,
we're not talking about we want to arrest you or not let you get married. No, they throw gay people off buildings.
And I get that. Yeah. I get that affinity for, okay, I've been oppressed, you're oppressed. That makes you my natural ally. I get that. It's just, okay, let's take that. Let's say that's a kernel of where to start. Now let's just examine what's the next layer of agreement that we have. Oh, we don't agree on anything else. Okay,
anything.
Maybe not. Maybe you're
out
as well. So then,
and they wouldn't even agree on their oppression. Right. So it's not like, it's like, oh, there's some microaggressions out there. Or you might have for a while had to pay higher taxes because you weren't allowed to get married. It's like, no. We're being oppressed in this way that is insulting to our religion that we live in a country that's ruled by those people. And it is now our sacred duty to kill as many of them as possible. And it's like, oh, we mean totally different things by oppression. It's But yeah, I don't think a lot of people really have thought that through. They just think they've sort of imagined the world as the goodies and the baddies, and we're both being oppressed by the baddies, so we're both the goodies.
We're together. Yeah. So anyway, sorry to our audience.
So that's the theory, that Shapiro was cut out because he was too pro-Israel. or that he was Jewish himself.
Well, so nobody said that. But
okay, good. That would be really sad if that'd be very inappropriate. If that was
he is pro-Israel and he is Jewish,
okay.
And so it's like, okay, so now you've got this Jewish guy on a ticket, and whatever percentage, at least a very vocal percentage of your party is, pro-Hamas. So like that's probably not going to work, and that was
interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. Tony, he's like, let's get to the real issues. He wants to talk about RFK moving dead bears around, which is another crazy story. This guy goes from, brainworms to dead bears. It is just nuts, the stories that have come out about RFK.
Well, it's not stories that have come out about it. It's stories that he's told.
Well, he had to come out on this because it was coming out. That's the whole thing. It was apparently somebody called him and said, "Hey, this story's coming out. Do you have a comment?" And he's like, "No, I don't have any comment." And so then he went on whatever that podcast was and told it himself, like, "Oh yeah, well, let me tell you about this." Da, da, da.
So what exactly happened?
So when he
according to him,
when he was young and irresponsible, this was like 10 years ago when he was 60. He's apparently he's
a very youthful old man.
Totally. Yeah. He's a very youthful 70-year-old. I was like, dude, this guy's I would
love to be in that great shape when I'm that age.
And I'd love to just hang out with the guy and get to know him a little bit better. He's just a raucous individual, which is that's PLU, man. That's my kind of person. But apparently, yeah, he was out drinking with some buddies and on some hunting trip or something, and witnessed this bear get hit. And I can't remember how it got hit, but some vehicle basically ran over the bear, whatever, it killed the bear in front of him. And so he pulled over. He was driving a pickup truck, I guess, picked up the bear, put it in his truck, and with the intention of, hey, I'm going on this hunting trip anyway, and we'll skin the bear and put it into
trophy now. Trophy.
Yeah. Just one other thing that we killed on this trip, right? We didn't kill it, but we saw it killed. So anyway, as the weekend went on, more drinking happened, whatever. Time got away from him, and now he's on his way to the airport and or whatever.
There's this dead bear in the truck.
And what am I going to do with this dead bear? And so they're like, well, I guess I heard some story about. I don't know how this came into his. He says it, I forget. But anyway, they get a bicycle and this bear, and they stage this what looks like a bicycle accident where this bicycle ran into the bear and killed it or whatever. So you got the dead bear, the bicycle
with the bicycle,
bent a wheel or something in Central Park and left it there, and then and this was
wait. So again, wait. He moved to the bear from the wilderness or out in the Adirondack Mountains, whatever.
The scene of
drove into New York City, dropped it off in Central Park, and staged an accident with the bicycle.
Right.
Really?
Right. And apparently
there's no way. This is the story he's telling?
Apparently, in fact, here's a 3-minute. Here, I'll just copy link, put it up here. Bay of Bears, Anthony says, yeah. Here you go. Here's the Twitter post. Nice little 3-minute story for you guys. Check it out. If you're on Facebook, by the way, watching this, the comments that I'm posting, I have to change a setting. The comments are going to be on the YouTube video, and just go to the hamadi.com/humpday. Let me put that up here for you guys. Hamadi.com/humpday, and that'll take you to the YouTube channel. It's going on live right over there. You can see the comment. Yeah, but that's where the link will be. Yeah.
So I'm assuming this violates some laws.
Oh, of course, dude. Desecration of a carcass, whatever, but they apparently, think about what happened afterwards, right? So he gets on the plane, does whatever his thing. Well, so the police find this bear and the bicycle and whatever else, and
a bicycle crashed into it.
And it starts
clearly been dead for several days.
Yeah, well, they got to figure out this test. Well, it doesn't look like this. Injuries are consistent with the bicycle accident and whatever. And apparently, as the story is investigated over several weeks or whatever, the authorities are still searching for the man who blah blah blah. And somehow, an article was written about this.
Okay.
By his niece or some relative of his, some other Kennedy who works for some publication. Is the reporter assigned to actually write the story? It's all very weird. The different weird again.
Did they know it was sweet Uncle Bob that did it?
Yeah. Well, so here's the Kennedy added, it is legal in New York State to get a bear tag to take home a roadkill bear.
Okay.
Kennedy says he got waylaid by a busy day of falconry, and then had to rush back to New York City for a dinner.
Falconry?
Peter Luger's Steakhouse. Had to go to the bear, and the bear was. I had to go to the airport. The bear was in my car, and I didn't want to leave the bear in the car because that would have been bad. So I decided to.
So it just gets better. So falconry. So it's like, did he have his page boy there? My lord, your falcon.
That's what you do in New York for fun, falconry.
Falconry. I mean, that's a very aristocratic little sport.
You're a Kennedy, you go out to the Hamptons and fly your birds around.
Fly your birds. And it's left the bear in the car. It's like, hey, we got to do something with this.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so here it is. The New York Times reporter who covered the mystery was Caroline Kennedy's daughter, Tatiana Shasta, who's his first cousin. She told the paper this weekend that, quote, like law enforcement, I had no idea who was responsible for this. Yeah. Yeah, law enforcement took the bear to Albany for analysis and determined it had been hit by a car, likely elsewhere. They also confiscated the bicycle to test for fingerprints. I was worried because my prints were all over that bike, Kennedy says in the video, drawing laughs from the room. But the mystery remained unsolved, and now Robert Stack can come out on Unsolved Mysteries and go, we now finally know.
I mean, especially since he was doing falconry, he should have left a little bag of gold. Like, this will cover the disposal. Here's a bag of gold. Full medieval.
So there's a New Yorker piece, I guess, that came out that exposed all this, and apparently was published Monday morning. It situates the bear anecdote within a larger look at Kennedy's checkered past, whatever. It also includes a photo of Kennedy who was posing with his hands inside the bear's bloody mouth and an exaggerated grimace on his face, like, ah. And he goes, maybe that's where I got my brain worm. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Thanks, Tony, for reminding me about that story.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So, not a serious candidate anymore. So, does this mean that we can stop the, 5-way race polling stuff? Well, I guess there's going to be some diehards that vote for Green Party or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know why that. I mean, I guess when a race is this tight, you gotta. I think at the end of the day, his exiting the race, or not exiting the race, but him being marginalized to this extent, I think that only helps Trump. Frankly, I think most of the voters that were going over were not people that are. I mean, maybe people that didn't like Joe Biden because he was about to die, they go vote for RFK. But like now, there's no reason for that. So,
yeah, because I would have thought that
be from Trump.
Yeah, generally, like your anti-establishment candidate would have been, like, if you're more on the left, it would have been Kennedy. If you're more on the right, it would have been Trump. But now I think maybe Trump consolidates the anti-establishment vote.
I think this. So here's another thing that I just think from maybe a 10,000 foot view or whatever, not quite 30,000, not like 10,000, a little bit better. You can see better, but I do think, we've talked about it on here before, but the whole old paradigm of left versus right, I think is old. It's tired. It's not really accurate. We've talked about this before. It's really more of a populist type movement versus an establishment type scenario that you have going on. I don't know if you saw this last week, something like 16 big time Republicans, including former members of Trump's administration, have come out and endorsed Harris or whatever.
Sure.
And people are like, oh, this validates even people from the right. But it's like, dude, I don't think you're getting that. That just makes total sense. If people that are institutional go this direction, people that are not go that direction. But it's also kind of interesting to see, again, with the Walz pick. I mean, rather than modify, I agree with you. What she is seen as liberal, let's say rightly or wrongly, whatever. She's seen however she's seen. Yeah. Instead of modifying her to the center, she picks somebody even conceivably to the left of her. Now, one thing I will say, he does present very well. He presents well. He speaks well. He's got a very casual, breezy kind of. It's like not even a grandpa, really. It's more of like he's just that kind of that older uncle or whatever. That's just cool
older guy. Yeah.
He went to a normal.
Like you can see why he's won elections. Like
100%. He didn't go to some Ivy League school, and right, so just went to middle of the pack university. Did well, 20 years in the National Guard. There is an issue with his service record, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. I think this is the real thing that is going to trip him up. But 20 years in National Guard, so honorable service, everything is good there. And then as a senator, now governor, or congressman, I think, I forget, Congress or Senate, anyway. And with high approval ratings from his constituency. So all that stacks up is like, okay, well, this makes sense of somebody you'd want to add to the ticket. Where I think it's bizarre choice is that, okay, Minnesota is reliably Democratic state. I mean, even in
Reagan's blue anyway.
Landslide victory, Minnesota was like one of two states that didn't go for him. In '84. So like Minnesota is blue, right? But even if you look at the voting county by county in Minnesota, like he draws support from the reliably Democratic region. It's not like he has some big crossover appeal, even in his own state. If you look county by county, he did worse in his last election than Hillary Clinton did, than Obama did. You have to go all the way back to, I think, Bush to find a polling number where, it was the other way around. Like,
wait a second. So you're saying that he, in a blue state, does not outperform other Democratic politicians in the state?
In the red areas. Right. So,
but I'm saying that it's not like he's, okay, it's a blue state, we're going to get a blue governor.
Yeah.
But it's not like, oh my gosh, but he's just appeals to everybody. He's still only appealing to Democrats. And just as there's more Democrats, it's a blue state.
That's right. When you break down number by number and county by county, he does not have some amazing crossover appeal, even in his own state in red counties. And that's, if you're gonna pick somebody because they have crossover appeal, you want to see, look, did they perform well in crossover counties? He did not. So that
the campaign must have figured they don't need that vote and just write it off.
I think really that is the calculus, and I think the calculus is also like where we want to get more people involved is maybe if we can get solidify the left, and maybe because this guy's more left than Kamala is, it makes her look more moderate, potentially, and then do we draw more young people out of the woodwork that are all about these other issues? Some of the things that he's signed off on are just nuts to me when you break down, the tampons in the boys' bathrooms, the thing you're talking about with the gender affirming care and not notifying parents, the born alive restrictions. When these babies, people like myself that are pro-choice. I am pro-choice. Happily pro-choice. I think anytime in the first 2 trimesters, I don't have a problem with a woman choosing to terminate her pregnancy, medically or otherwise. I do think the fetus has some rights. I don't believe the fetus is a human being, full-blown person. Legally, your birth certificate says the day you came out of your mother, you're not a human person legally with full laws as a citizen inside the womb. Like that's never been a thing. But now you have all these personhood laws being passed everywhere, ostensibly to protect the baby. But like it completely, in my opinion, I'm not a fan of any of that. So whatever. I mean, if you are,
Okay.
good on you. That's not me. However, I do think the fetus, it is a human being, right? It may not be a person legally, but it is human life. It is a human being, is a developing person. And I do think it has rights, some rights, additional rights, the further along the pregnancy progresses. And my opinion is when the baby is, and it is a baby, I don't care whatever people say, like, oh, fetus, da, da, da. I'm saying fetus and embryo because that's the stage of development it is in. It's also a human baby, developing baby, right? And when you get to the point that the baby is viable outside the womb, it is very difficult for me to get my brain around like, okay, well, we should just that is no longer terminating pregnancy. That's terminating pregnancy by killing the baby that's inside your body that could live outside your body, right? And not saying that there might be an exception for this or that or whatever, but like that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like babies that are literally about to be born.
And they're out. No, the born alive one, they're out.
But they're trying. They've tried to terminate the pregnancy and botched it somehow, and so the baby was born alive, and then they set the baby aside and don't give it any care to let it die on the table because we tried to. To me, that is crazy that goes on, and whatever.
Why are you trying to oppress women?
Yeah, that is not oppressing women. That is there are competing rights here. You have the rights of the developing fetus and you have the rights of the woman. I do believe in women's rights. I do believe a woman has the right over her own body, but that right diminishes over time as that baby becomes more and more viable. And I think past the point of viability, it's very difficult for, I don't think this is even an extreme position. If you poll the average person out there and say, hey, is it okay if we try to terminate the pregnancy the day before the baby's born, but we mess up and the baby's born, do we have to then care for that baby? Really? Most people would be like, of course. But
no.
And the thing is,
no, if you respect women, you have to kill the baby.
You have to kill the baby. They said,
you have to kill the baby.
When we're like, oh, is this a problem? He's like, the problem is that we have this reporting that the hospitals had to report.
They have to say that it happened. Yeah.
And so we're going to eliminate the need for the hospital to report on it. That's the solution. And to me, that is just whatever. I mean, like,
well, now we don't have to be.
I'm not a.
You don't have to be concerned with the messy headlines that come along with true women's rights.
And again, I'm not a single issue voter. I don't think that's the only thing that's out there to vote on. But that is definitely something to vote on, right? As is on the other side, all these states that are making it illegal for women to even get an abortion shortly after they find out they're pregnant. It's like, oh, you only had 5 weeks to make this decision, and oops,
week 6.
Week 6, so you're screwed. And it's like, oh, and now we want to have laws to prosecute these women who are trying to leave these states. If I'm in Texas and I want to go next door to New Mexico so I can get an abortion, it's like, oh no, we're going to make that a crime too. It's like, really? So you have equally crazy stuff happening on both sides that I think is just, and people are going to decide which of these things are important or not important or whatever. In the grand scheme of things, I don't think that as crazy as what I just described is, I think the overwhelming sentiment among most women and many men in the United States is, look, these states that are making it illegal to have an abortion, even if you're raped, even if you're whatever, all these different things, they're forcing you to carry the baby. That is not a policy that we're behind. And that is a mobilizing force in getting out the vote against people that support those things. The problem is that you and I were talking about this earlier. You're like, oh, are they going to make this part of the platform? If they full-throatedly embrace what is going on in Minnesota as part of a platform, right? It's one thing to say, oh, this crazy thing's going on in Minnesota. Yeah, I tried to stop it.
Well, each state,
Well, yeah. But if they're like, oh, no, this is great, and we embrace this nationwide, they will lose that issue. So if you're a conservative, you should really hope that they do embrace that as a tactic, because they will lose that pro-choice energy that's out there, that where people are like, look, you are taking away women's rights. It's not cool, which I'm definitely in that camp. with some caveats, right? So like, I think that's a big issue. Second thing I'll put out there is the military piece of his record.
Yeah, you were telling me about that. I had not seen this. What did you find out?
So here's the thing. So you remember what happened with John Kerry, the Swift Boat Veterans for Truth or whatever, right? When he was running Bush in 2004, right? Kerry was like winning that race. Bush very unpopular after sending people into Iraq, and people are like, "Oh my God, this is crazy." John Kerry, huge anti-war guy, going back to Vietnam, so very consistent in his positions there, and was like, among other things, you had this Swift Boat Veterans for Truth, the guys that served in the military on Swift boats, with John Kerry was on one, and basically like completely decimated his look. He says he's a Purple Heart winner. Here's what actually happened. He says this is what actually happened. And they had the records, they had all this different stuff. Basically, he, as many of us do, weave a narrative about your past experience that may have a little fluff in it. And the one thing
he overfluffed it.
The one thing you can't do in this country is you cannot amp up your military record. People get pissed off. Okay. Yeah. Because it is, so many of us have friends that have served, et cetera. And all of us, I mean, with few exceptions, you could be some loony that disrespects people. And most of us are like, dude, that's a huge sacrifice and we appreciate it if we didn't serve. Thank you. I mean, there is an element of that that's, it's corporate warfare, whatever. Okay, fine. Yes, there is some of that goes on.
Yeah, but the guy that served was brave to do so.
He was brave, went over there, volunteer. Everybody that does that's a volunteer in this country right now. And so I appreciate your service. And I'll say that to anybody who's ever served.
Regardless of whether we agree with the war or not.
Correct. Right. When you amp up your military service, that is basically, they call it stolen valor. Is that, look, you're saying that you went out and did all this, but we know people that actually did do that. I did that myself, whatever the case may be. And that is not right. Right. Like many working families that are like upset about illegal immigrants getting certain benefits, for example. It's like, look, dude, I work hard, I pay my taxes, and I have trouble getting that stuff, and they're handing it out to you for free. That ain't right. Right. That's a very basic human fairness thing, which I totally get. And while saying, hey, we should have some kind of mechanism to take care of it, because we don't want to turn criminals. That's what the big, you're trying to avoid. But at the same time, it's like, well, so I get that sentiment big time. And he's got a big problem with that. So here are the facts. The facts are he, served 20 years and then I guess re-upped.
National Guard, you said, or Reserve, something like that.
Right. And he re-upped after right after September 11th for 4 years. He says 4 years. And then right before his group was supposed to deploy, something like 3.5 years later or whatever, he took early retirement.
That would have been to Iraq. To
Iraq. They got mobilized and they were supposed to go to Iraq, and he exited early. Right. And a lot of the guys that he served with were like, wait a minute, and he was a high ranking dude, not a general, but like as an enlisted person, I think a sergeant, whatever forgive me, I'm not a military person, but like he was a high ranking guy in charge of these men and vacated. Right. So a lot of them they've interviewed him, whatever. They're like, oh, he totally abandoned us, left us, leaderless or whatever. And I'm sure the military has, they put in somebody else, but you've been working together as a unit and you just bail. That's a lot of them said that was not cool. However, and so as I was hearing the story, my first reaction was, that's some bull. That doesn't make any sense. That's not going to sell well. And if there's a mechanism where you can retire in a certain window or whatever, that's legit. I mean, dude, Donald Trump didn't want to go serve either, right? Claim bone spurs, whatever else, right? There's lots of people.
No one's claiming that. No one's claiming that he deserted or that he dodged the draft or something like that in Vietnam. None of that.
Here's the wrinkle. The paperwork shows that he re-enlisted for 6 years, and exiting when he did would have absolutely been abandoning, his post basically. And somehow he was able to get it afterwards was able to get it worked out. But not within the, whatever, there's some kind of grace period or whatever, where he could have early opted out, like taking Social Security early, I guess. I don't know how the whole mechanism worked, but that's the controversy, is that he says he re-upped for 4. The truth is he re-upped for 6, and that early exit, I think, is the other thing that he has been saying his entire time, is he's the highest ranking military officer, because he was he had reached a certain level, and then he served in Congress, and up to now he's the highest ranking retired whatever level that is that's ever served in Congress.
Okay.
And that is true. He did attain that rank, but he did not retire that rank because he never retired. He left. And so the fact that he's out there saying like, oh, I'm a retired this and that, like there are a lot of people right and left who served who are like, they're going to just be personally offended at that. And that's a huge constituency that they can't afford to lose, I don't think. So to me, that's a big problem.
Did he, from your research, did he ever serve in combat?
No.
Okay. I think that would, so yeah. I think if, so the stolen valor thing.
I started typing in Tim Walz, and the first thing that popped up in Google, Tim Walz, military service. Which just
so everyone's looking at this.
These mics, these mics are on and transmitting stuff back to Anyway,
so I think for so you have to think about messaging. So saying that there was some kind of issue with his retirement or whatever, that is pretty technical. I think maybe if you're part of the military, that might mean something to you, but for everybody else, it's just like, oh, whatever, there was some problem. If we can, and we'll see how this develops out, but if there's video of him saying that he served in combat, like, oh, in war, I did this or something, and he did not serve in combat, I think that's something that that's sort of catchy. That's the kind of thing that can stick to someone that you can do good messaging around. So I'm sure everybody's looking through every video he's ever done to see if he's ever said that he served in combat.
You got to figure they vetted this, but supposedly, so National Guard article on his unit's deployment states that it received alert orders to deploy to Iraq in July of 2005, 2 months after Walz retired. The unit first mobilized in the fall of 2005. And then deployed in 2006 for 22 months. And then Walz filed paperwork with the FECA as a candidate for Congress on February 10th of 2005, which would have been 4 months before that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think
this is from CNN though, so you got to wonder like how much of this is already sanitized,
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I think like the timing of his retirement, or did he file the right paperwork, is not exciting probably to enough voters.
So here's a headline.
But lying about combat service would be.
So Minnesota National Guard is disputing Tim Walz's military biography, saying the Democratic vice president did not hold the rank of command sergeant major at the time of his retirement. So he did not retire as that because he did not complete additional coursework in the U.S. Sergeant Major Academy. So a soldier who does not complete the coursework is automatically demoted. So let's see here. Oh, yeah. When he first ran for governor in 2018, 2 retired senior officials with the Minnesota National Guard wrote an open letter criticizing him for retiring shortly before his battalion was sent for active duty deployment. He had the opportunity to serve his country and said, screw you to the United States. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's going to be, like, that's one of those stories that the expose that would be written would be, like, you get all the data together, and you're like, okay, so maybe he was tipped off that they were going to be deployed, and so he, and it's like, you look at it and you're like, okay, so what? Is this really a story? It's not a story. I think there's no soundbite with it. So I don't know. I'm kind of less convinced that that'll be an issue. But if they find sound bites of him talking about serving in combat, or like being deployed, or this is what it was like over there, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But to be fair, both Hillary and Biden said
he's never claimed he served in combat. So
okay, so I think he's probably in the clear. But I think Hillary talked about like flying into war zones and having bullets whizzing over. And it never happened. And Biden also had similar kind of stories. And that never seemed to affect their popularity. So
it's different because it's not a stolen valor thing, you know. That's I'm just saying in the military world.
Oh, you know, okay.
People make fun of that
because they were not in the military.
Yeah, they weren't in the military, so they can embellish whatever stories they want. Who was that news anchor? Brian Williams.
They were shooting at us. It was scary.
That never happened. Yeah.
What? Yeah.
At least he was fired or relocated or whatever, you know.
Oh yeah. Was it Brian Williams?
Yeah, I think that's right.
It made up stories about being shot at. They're like, that never.
Come on, man. I mean, and he multiple times. It's not even like, oh, you did it once and got away with it. You know, you might want to just stop while you're ahead, right? It's crazy.
Nah, some of these people, they just believe their own hype after a while.
Totally. Well, so yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. So you got a very left-oriented ticket, and you got a very right-oriented ticket, and you got a lot of people who are kind of just common sense people in the middle going, which one of these crazies do I want to support? You know, if it was left, but I don't think that's the formulation. And that's why I don't think a lot of these policies, like whether it's liberal, whether it's conservative, I really just don't think half the Trump supporters I talk to, like you run down what's in, let's say Project 2025 before he disavowed that or whatever. And I say, are you in favor of this? You in favor of this? You in favor of this? And most people are like, no, that's crazy. Right. But okay, well, Trump wants to do all those things. You still want to support Trump? Absolutely. He's my guy. Right. I don't think, and you know, I think people on the left are going to do the same thing. Oh, you want tampons in the boys' bed? I don't, it doesn't matter. Who cares? You know, if boys don't need tampons, they won't take them. What's the big deal? Oh, you know, we can't walk past a basket of tampons without getting, you know, I mean, like, whatever. Yeah. I just don't think, I don't think it's going to matter. I think what is going to matter is you want people that want to stand up for democracy and protect our institutions over here, which is not sexy, by the way. You want to protect the institutions. And then you have people over here that just want things to work for the American people, and we're ready to bash some heads in to make it happen. My money is still on the head bashers, frankly.
Yeah.
And
well, to be honest, I think so this is just me looking at it. I think that the biggest issue with the campaign, the whole process is, do you like where things are headed now with the organization of the executive branch? So I'm not talking about Biden, right? Or Harris, but like the executive branch, is it working for you? And if you think it is, you will get more of the same with Harris. If you think it's broken or needs to be shaken up, that will happen under Trump. And I think that in general, there are not very many people happy with how things are going. I think the right track, wrong track stuff was like in the low 30s for right track. Like 70-30 think that the nation's on the wrong track. Now they might think it's wrong track for different reasons, but it's like, well, I've struggled to find people who felt like the current administration was doing a good job. They've said things like, well, think of how much worse it would be under Trump, or with Trump, we would have started World War III, and we haven't done that yet, you know, or whatever. But I don't think it's almost like they're like, well, it's a bitter pill that we have to swallow. We have this incompetent administration, but it's worth doing because otherwise we would get this other thing that would be far worse. So without people saying, yeah, I want more of the same, or at least not very many of them, then I think what I was hoping for with the vice presidential pick for Harris was that it would give people a reason to vote for more of the same. And I don't know that it's done that. And I think that calculus is probably the one that people will eventually win out, is like, are things better for you now than when Trump was in power? You know, and it's like, for the vast majority of Americans, the answer to that is no. You know,
well, dude,
and then it's
chart, like, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
That chart that you sent the other day, I'm trying to.
Oh, the price increase chart.
Yeah, I mean, So let me see if I can blow this up for you guys.
Yeah. And prices are one element. There's many pieces of the puzzle, but that would definitely be one element.
Yeah. So, I mean, and this really, to me, I mean, you don't need, the average person doesn't need an economics degree to figure this out. I mean, everything that they buy, everything I buy is more expensive. So that means I have less disposable income. You know, I mean, my disposable income hasn't suffered because I own my own business, work for myself. I can go make more money, but I mean, I have to work harder for the same things, basically, right? But I mean, 38% energy overall, 47% for gas. So if it cost you $40 to fill up your tank, now it costs you 60, right? Yeah. Eggs, 50% almost. Groceries as a whole, 21%. So you're spending $200 at the grocery store. Now you're spending $240 for the same stuff. You know, chicken. I mean, who's even eating chicken? No, I'm just kidding. I love chicken. Fried chicken.
The pores.
Not fried chicken. Give me that fried chicken. But I mean, that's not.
Yeah.
You know, when you said this to me earlier, I was like, dude. Well, I mean that says it right there.
But I mean this is the stuff that I think a lot of people experience. There's now a term that has become kind of popular. I don't know if we talked about this, but you've heard of a situationship, right?
Yeah.
Where you're in a relationship, but it's not really a relationship. So the new term is an inflationship. Oh. And that's where it's just like you just can't afford your own bills.
Right.
So it's like
together so we can split some bills. Yeah.
Move in. Yeah. I mean, it's not there's not much romance there, but at least we get split the bills. Yeah, it's an inflationship. You know, it's like so bad.
An inflationship. What are your thoughts though? And this is my other question for you is what are your thoughts on the reaction to this Tim Walz pick, right, from Trump and his people? Like, so I'll give you an example here. So I sent this to you earlier today, right? And just when you read this out loud, right? Yeah. What are the chances that crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of the United States, whose presidency was unconstitutionally stolen from him by Kamala, Barack Hussein Obama, crazy Nancy Pelosi, shifty Adam Schiff, crying Chuck Schumer, and others on the lunatic left, crashes the Democrat National Convention and tries to take back the nomination, beginning with challenging me to another debate? He feels that he made a historically tragic mistake by handing over the U.S. presidency, a coup, to the people in the world he most hates, and he wants it back now. And it's so funny, dude. I was telling a friend of mine, you know, this is True Social. This is his platform, right?
Yeah.
I'm a happy free subscriber. It is the most entertaining website.
I don't even have an account. Sorry.
Oh, you got to get one. It's just so funny.
I guess I do.
Well, and it's funny because you know who has one. So Kamala Harris has one. Tim Walz, Democrat, DNC. They are blasting this stuff all over True Social because he just makes himself look nuts, and I don't understand. And it's so funny because you can tell which posts he writes himself and which posts he has somebody, you know, one of his staffers do. Yeah. Oh, we want to congratulate so-and-so for winning whatever. He's like, staffer, you know, it's like no caps, forget it.
That's how you know it's real.
What do you make of this stuff?
So this to me, I kind of put it in the same category as Hulk Hogan coming out of the GOP convention, tearing his shirt off, talking about Trumpomania. You know, I mean, it's like if you think about Trump as at heart a kind of a carnival barker, supreme ringmaster kind of person. So then it's like, well, you know, it's like the speech that John Cena would make coming out, you know, like, and this coward doesn't have the cojones to challenge, get into the ring, you know, and everyone,
that's all,
you know, and they're like throwing chairs into the audience, everyone's cheering, right? That's what it sounds like to me. So, you know, that doesn't do it for me. but I'm a mild-mannered college professor. But I have a feeling that there's plenty of people out there that are like, yeah, come on, you don't have the guts to debate. Obama's the real come out, Obama. And if he came out with a robe on and everything, they'd be like, boo, and it would be exciting. Like he has a part of his constituency that likes that stuff. So
Yeah,
I don't know. It doesn't seem that. We've been seeing it. It doesn't seem that wild to me.
True. That is true.
What?
Okay, so let's shift gears here. Let's shift gears. And let's talk about the Olympics.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I'll tell you, I've been so enjoying it. And I know there's a whole bunch of problems that they've been having, like they weren't able to clean up the Seine enough, and so people swimming in it or coming up throwing up. I don't
even want to think about what I was brushing up against in that river. Yeah, people say,
yeah, like, oh, it's totally safe. We cleaned it. We spent billions of dollars cleaning.
Oh, there you go. We literally just took buckets of money and poured billions of dollars into it.
There you go. That's how politicians do things. Well, and there was some funny scandals, not minor scandals, involving the Olympic Village itself. People were taking video of people are sleeping on cardboard boxes, and like, wait, you didn't want to
sustainable bedding.
Sustainable bedding, yes.
Excuse me.
Yeah, whatever. But as far as the coverage goes, I've really enjoyed it. One of my big complaints in the early 2000s when NBC was, because for a while there was several different networks would own pieces of it. So if you wanted to watch some sports, you'd be watching ESPN. If you want to watch some sports, you'd watch ABC, NBC, whatever. And then NBC bought the whole thing. They're like, we are the exclusive providers. And then they had the coverage quality declined steadily. So we got to this point where in the early 2000s, it would be like 5 minutes of commercials, and then Costas would sit up there and be like, and now we're going to show you an inspiring documentary about this one competitor.
Right.
And you'd see like 5 minutes of that, and then and now here they are winning the gold medal. And you're like, wait, we don't, okay, spoiler alert. And we watched it'd be like the 1,000-meter dash, and we'd see the last 3 seconds of it as they cross the finish line. And now to another award ceremony, you're like, well, I'm not seeing any sports. This is terrible.
What's going on? Yeah.
And now with Peacock, every single sport I can watch live. I can go back and watch anyone. So it's like, you know what? I never got to see much Olympic weightlifting. I love watching that style of weightlifting. I never got to see much Olympic table tennis. Speed climbing, a new sport.
Yeah, that was awesome. I love that one. Yeah.
And instead of sitting there going, and of course they have their sort of a prime time in Paris thing. Sure. If you just want to put on something and watch some sports, watch the medal races, but it's like, no, we can watch every single.
They had that biography section, so you could if you were really into the backstories. Yeah.
But it's like all of the things that were promised about media moving to streaming from broadcast is actually come true.
Yeah.
And I think it's great.
Totally delivered. I mean, was.
I have nothing but kudos for these guys. It's been their coverage system has been perfect.
Yeah, I have access to a Euro Sport subscription, and so my in the past, Eurosport would get basically give you like 10 channels, and so channel 1 would be this, channel 2 would be that, and it would be this is the ball sports, this is water sports, is whatever, right? And so I had literally in preparation for this Olympics, I had gone and kind of made a list of okay, these are this channels does this.
When do I tune in?
And and then I looked online okay, where do I find a schedule for when these events are? And I was kind of in the process of building out kind of my Olympic regimen, so to speak. And then
every 4 years, gotta dive
totally,
in.
Dude. I'm into it. I'm into it. I love the Olympics. I love the World Cup. I love all these global events. Very, very cool stuff, I think. Speaks to, I think, the best of humanity, frankly. And so when I saw what Peacock was doing, and thankfully I hadn't gotten too much into this. I'd kind of done maybe an hour's worth of work on, here and there. And when I realized, oh my God, you can literally, they have every, it blew my mind. I didn't watch Eurosport, once. I mean, it was just so great being able to, and like, okay, kids, having the kids. I mean, now that Brooks and Kyler, 5 and 7 respectively, it's like, well, what do you guys want to watch?
What sport do you want to watch?
Yeah. Oh, I want to watch it. Do you got, well, here, now, wait a minute. So they have a sport where they sail boats and the boats almost tip over, but they keep going. Do you want to see that one? Do they tip over? Well, sometimes they do. Yeah, let's watch that. You want to see rowing, you want to see sword fighting, it's some sports I didn't have any idea that were even done. I was like, I was embarrassed that actually to find out that apparently whitewater kayaking, which has been an Olympic sport forever, I didn't know that. So like we're watching.
Because you would have never seen it,
right?
And especially, and this is again NBC in the early 2000s. They're not like that anymore, but they would only show you the stuff where the Americans had medaled,
right?
And so if it's a sport that Americans just generally didn't do or didn't really do well, you would never even know that it happened at all.
Right. And also the ability to watch, I think, live, like to be able to be there, the one relay when that girl from the Netherlands, the mixed 400-yard relay, that was unbelievable. Just being able to watch it live and you're of course, rooting for America, whatever. But that girl from the Netherlands like closed so hard and stole it from her at the last second. I don't know if you watched that. That was like just moments like that. You never
such a beautiful moment.
Yeah, you never got to see that before. Like you said, because it's like, unfortunately, we failed to catch medal in this one, silver. And let's show you the highlights in the last 2 seconds of the race or whatever. And you're like, well, I already know what's going to happen because you just said it. So yeah. Anyway, I love that. I did think some of the controversies I thought were a little bit disappointingly kind of overblown. We talked about the Last Supper, I think, last week. We didn't really talk too much about the boxer. Pierce Morgan had a whole segment on this. Megyn Kelly had a whole segment on this, and I find it just I don't know. Like when I first heard the story, I was like, well, that ain't right, But like in this particular instance, right?
Sometimes it's fun to let men hit women. What's the problem? No,
I'm curious your thoughts.
Malicious agreement.
I've had this. Yeah, of course. We've been wanting to do it for years. Now you can.
Yeah. Bring back the old days. No.
What are your thoughts about this? Right. So this Algerian, right? I can't remember her name, but the big controversy, right?
And Amain Khalif, I think.
Okay. So when you actually look at her backstory, so she was born, yes, XY chromosomes, but at birth, right, she was intersex, and the doctors did what they needed to do to give her woman parts, and they assigned her. She was a female from birth on her birth certificate. So yes, she has XY chromosomes. However, she was born a woman, designated a woman, lived her entire life as a woman, right, and then at some point, obviously, failed a chromosome test or whatever, and then, just go, oh, is this going to derail my career? What does this mean? Whatever. And it's just, telling her story, whatever. And that is not the same as a man who decides, oh, I want to get a gold medal. I'll just transition to a woman and now I'll go beat up women. That's not the same thing at all. So, and I think, there are, a very small case number, less than 1% of, but it's still, you're talking about a few hundred people every year that are born intersex. So either XX chromosomes, but, presenting male, and they're given male parts at birth by doctors.
Yeah. Or having ambiguous genitalia. They're like, we don't really know what's going on,
And the practice is certainly in America has been to, you got to pick one. What are you gonna do here? And usually it's a conversation between the family, but in some cases there is no conversation because we don't have enough to do that, so we're gonna do the other thing. I just what are your thoughts on that whole thing?
I was talking to the kids about this as one of the fun things about having older teenagers.
You got teenagers, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you can actually have a philosophical conversation about it. And they're daughters, and they're both. I think my oldest is like a really good first wave feminist. Like she would have marched for the vote, I think, with Mary Wollstonecraft.
All right.
Yeah, she really would have. And so, I think when we were talking about it, I think the situation for the boxers themselves is tragic, because they're sort of caught between two different definitions for what a woman is, and I don't mean like a political definition. So anytime you get to like a really advanced level in sport, you're going to get people who are anatomically kind of freaks, So like the American swimmer that won all those gold medals a few years ago, Michael Phelps.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at his proportions, nobody on earth has shoulders like that and that kind of a waist, and his shoulders are double jointed. So he can go all the way around and more efficiently than other people. And it's like, well, that's a lot of genetic variation to all happen in one person.
Right.
To give him an advantage. And it's like,
and he was lucky to pick the perfect sport to make use of those too, so.
Well, I have a feeling he tried a whole bunch of sports because he was also very athletic. And this one is like, he just excelled. So like the more you win, the more you double down on it.
Right.
So, and I think you see this with female women's sports as well, where you get a lot of outliers. And so there's a much greater chance that you'll find someone that is, say, XY chromosome, but with androgen insensitivity or, any number of different conditions that would give them an advantage, because every tiny little advantage.
Many times they may not even know they have,
They may not.
Yeah.
And so it's like at the very top level.
In some extreme
cases.
Even the parents may not know in some extreme cases. Like,
well, so for XY androgen insensitive, sometimes you don't find out until something goes wrong with your parts, and that you're like, oh yeah, you have prostate cancer, and they're like, what are you talking about? I'm a woman. They're like, well, actually, and they show you the MRI, and it's like, and that's how you find out, right? I mean, that would be, like I said, so any small advantage when you're looking at like the elite level is probably going to matter. And so for the purposes of competition, not for like political purposes or in reality, who do you think you are, but for the purposes of competition, women need to decide, maybe per sport, maybe just in general, what counts as a woman. And it has to be separate from like the philosophical question of just like, yes, I might, and I don't think it's for me. Like, I don't care. I'm not interested in women's sports. Like, it doesn't matter to me. But like, but for women, the whole point of having, instead of everyone just competing on an open playing field and say, hey, open class, everybody can compete. What's the problem?
Dude, of course, the whole point of having women's sports is women wouldn't win against men in many sports. And that's the whole point of having a separate competition, is so that you can recognize achievement as a female,
Exactly. And I think so then it's kind of up to women to sort of, I don't know, unionize and decide, here's who we want to compete against. Not
the thing is,
who is a woman, but like what counts as a woman for this sport.
Right.
And
then you have to be subject to those rules, right? So it's like, well, okay, so you have in this particular case, I guess there's some governing body in Europe that had disqualified her because she was XY chromosome. So I'm sorry, and then I guess,
well,
I don't know
so this is
able to set it aside or what, but the IOC said no problem.
So this is why her situation is so tragic, and that's what I think is that the International Olympic Committee doesn't directly manage the sports. Each sport is managed by their own international body,
and then they submit.
And all of them are corrupt. But some, the corruption is so bad that like, well, FIFA is minor. I mean, like one of them. So this is the last year they're going to do Olympic
we're talking about
weightlifting.
Boxing, and we all know what boxing promotion is like. So I mean,
So routinely, a sports international sport management system will get sanctioned by the IOC and removed for being too corrupt. Like you can be somewhat corrupt, but when we're starting to like hand people bars of gold. Well, I mean, there was one sport that in exchange for money covered up performance enhancing drug test failures. So it's like, oh yeah, you came back as positive. It's like, well, here's some money. It's like, oh, what test? And so I mean, there's all sorts of crazy stuff that goes on. So once a organization gets that corrupt, they're like, okay, you can't manage it anymore. So
but they're not even saying, because they're sovereign organizations. So the IOC just says you can't, you do whatever you want, but because you guys are doing that, you can't be in the Olympics. Right.
We're not going to accept your organization as the thing managing that thing for the Olympics.
Right.
So in 2023 is when this ruling was made against these athletes. And that was also the same year that organization no longer is allowed to make decisions for the Olympics.
Right.
So they're not allowed to compete under the international rules. But since those don't apply to the Olympics, they're like, well, on your passport says female. That's all we got to worry about, because we're not following those rules. Plus, the organization, the boxing organization, is housed in Russia, and right now everybody hates Russia. So it's kind of like, wow, it was a Russian thing preventing these, yeah. So it's like just kind of messy geopolitically. But so it's like she was disqualified last year, and then found out this year, no, we're going to allow you to do it. And so it's like, I can't imagine the excitement that she must have felt being allowed to compete in the sport that she's trained her whole life for. And she's going to get it here. And as she's advancing through the ranks, all this stuff is going on. And, so it's like, I don't feel like any of this is the athlete's fault at all. This is like, the whiplash from the rules changing around. And as long as the rules stay consistent and they're consistently enforced, then you get into that sport knowing these are who your competitors could be, and then you have to be okay with them.
Yeah. So I'm with you on all of that. So like, how do you feel about, or what do you think about like all these conservatives insisting, oh no, and vocally like calling her a man, and no, I mean, he's a man. So, yeah, whatever, he can't do that. It's almost like, it's funny. I heard Jordan Peterson years ago. One of the things that rocketed him to fame is that he refused to pronoun somebody the way that they wanted to be pronouned. And I guess
no, he argued that he had the right to. He said he never would. He had the right.
He had the right to. Right, correct. Yeah. So misgendering, I think, is what they call it. So he just said, look, I mean, why wouldn't it be my right to call anybody whatever I choose to call them? Like, I mean, your right to ask me to do something, it's my right to refuse. And what's the right? Which I thought was an interesting distinction. Yeah, he was like, I would never do that. I'm saying I have the right to do that, right? And it certainly shouldn't be made a crime. I think at the time there was legislation somewhere. Maybe it's Canada.
Oh, it's currently a crime in Canada.
Yeah. So you're not allowed to misgender.
Currently a crime. There are people serving prison sentences in Canada right now for misgendering people.
So I'm with him on that. Like, that's crazy that you imprison somebody
for speech.
For speech, right? And not even
pronouns.
Anyway, it's so offensive. We have to put you in jail. To me, that is crazy talk, right? But so anyway, but then there are people that are like, well, no, we have to like call things the way that they are. Language doesn't mean anything. And it's like, okay, well, this person is born a woman, lives her whole life as a woman, and now because of some sport she's playing, like nobody would ever find out that you had XY chromosomes because the sport is playing, somebody leaks this, made public, whatever the case may be, and now it's like, oh no, you're a man. Like that is so not only disorienting for the person, but like forget the person's feelings. Like some people say, oh, screw your feelings. I mean, congratulations, now you know the truth, right? Like, I mean, maybe you should be grateful that you can now live as a man. Whatever, I don't know, but it speaks so much about like the in my opinion, like the character of people that are just like, why would you make that a thing? I don't get it. I do get some of the crazier, more in your face trans stuff where like, person's got a beard, but they're wearing a dress and they're like, no, my name is Susan, like I get
it's
that.
ma'am.
It's like, come on, man. Like, I mean, make a better effort. But I mean, like, this is, I don't know.
it's evidence of some frustration, some pent up frustration there.
Okay.
Um, and I think it comes
Elegantly
down
said, as
to,
always. This is why I ask you these questions.
yeah. Well, I think it comes down to basically a debate over bioessentialism, and that is that like being a man or being a woman is biologically sourced. It's a identity that you get that supervenes upon a biological reality, and in the case of chromosomes, a chemical reality. Not, so it's not aesthetic, it's not cultural, it's written into your cells. So I think that the most natural position for someone to have would be some form of bioessentialist. In the same way that, like, if you're saying, oh, black widow spiders, which one lays the eggs and eats the other one? It's like the female. It's like, why? Because biologically, right? I mean, it's like it's not confusing. So so if you say, okay, well, if that seems like a natural position to hold, some kind of biological base strata that we build our identities off of, then what are we going to point to say that's the thing that makes someone male or female? And I think the one that sort of stands out because it is in every single cell and directs so much of the way our proteins are encoded and all that is that Y chromosome. And so to say, well, if it's not that, what would it be? And so then again, thinking of the tragedy here of this person who looks like a woman, lives her whole life like a woman, and
believes
she's a woman, and and because of a birth defect has every sign of being a woman, yet is not because of the presence of this thing. And it's like,
and so now
well,
she
that
has
could
to
be
use the men's restroom.
Right. So that's what I'm saying.
He must use the men's restroom. It's like
that,
what?
Right. So here's I think something that no one is, or very few people maybe are willing to do, is to say, well, look, it's what we call the fallacy of the I don't know if you've ever heard. So one of the there's two fallacies that are kind of twins but go in reverse. So one of them is the fallacy of the special case, and then the other one is the fallacy of, and I'm going to get the name wrong here, dicto simpliciter. The other one. Okay. Anyway, the idea is that you've got sort of the ordinary, and then you have the exceptional.
Okay.
And that a wise person will be able to recognize both of those. And it would be unwise to say, well, look, the ordinary case is the way it is, therefore there are no exceptions at all. It's like, well, that's not smart. And then the other side of it is just as bad, is where you say, well, look, see, there's some exceptions. That means there is no ordinary case. Right?
Yeah.
It's destroyed. So in the case of like birds, you're like, well, how many fingers does a human have? And you're like, 10. It's like, well, no, 10. Because you see, here's someone that has 11.
There's 11, yeah.
Or 9, yeah. Or here's someone who's born without hands. So, how many, there's no answer. Humans can have any number. It's like, no.
Some people have 10. Some people have other numbers. We don't judge them.
It just doesn't matter. It doesn't. There's nothing. There's no truth to it at all.
How many legs? Well, I mean, who knows, right? How many brains?
Now it would be.
Well, they're conjoined twins. We can't say.
It would be just
2 heads. Who knows?
It would be just as silly to say, well, look, this person over here has 9 fingers, not a human.
Right.
Because we know humans have 10, right?
Right.
So okay, so that's a really crude example, but I think
that's good.
I think
that's helpful.
If you say, look, okay, XY chromosomes normally is what makes someone a man or male, and we could talk about someone being biologically male, but this is so obviously an exception to our normal rule.
See, I think
that we should sort of suspend that for them.
Right. I think what's interesting is, and I think it's a common problem that goes across all kinds of issues, right? Like, for example, in the abortion issue, right? Like at what week do we want to say the line is, right? Like before this line, you can terminate your pregnancy. After this line, you can't terminate your pregnancy, right? Some people say there shouldn't be a line. Some people, either way, right? Like, oh, you never terminate a pregnancy. Other people are like, oh, you can always terminate a pregnancy. I was like, okay, well, no, we're going to say
even until they're like 2 or 3 years old, you can still terminate.
Yeah, that kid.
Actually, there are people that say that.
Bill Cosby, I brought you into this world, and I can take you out.
Take you out.
But I think where to draw the line is the challenge, right? Well, first, should we draw a line? Second, where should it be drawn, right? And so I think the conversation is to oversimplify it is around those things. Should there be a line at all? And if so, where should it be? And I think you're 100% right. It's like speed limits, right? So why is going 55 safe, but 56 is reckless driving, right? Like, makes no sense, right?
You got to pick another.
We could pick another one. Statutory rape. Why is it okay to sleep with somebody on their birthday, but the day before, you're a felon, like that's a rapist, even, right? Like, so there's any number of different things where it's like, well, how does that make sense, right? And I think the making laws, the process of making laws and ordering your society is an endless number of those conversations, right? So I remember the whole conversation about gay marriage years ago before, when we were still doing DOMA and all this other kind of stuff. It's like, well, if you let them do that, then, people will be marrying their dogs, and it's like, what?
Polygamy.
Well, yeah, exactly. Pedophilia. It's like, what are you talking about, man? Like, it's like sodomy laws, right? It's like, oh, you tell them they can stick it there, they're going to think they can stick it anywhere. It's like, what are you talking about, man? Like, so I just think but that is part of the process of ordering your society. And it's like, this sucks. You fell on the wrong side of this line. Is there any grace for that person? And I think that's where this case by case thing, like where you got to maybe have a really good reason, but that's why we have an appeal system in our legal system too, is because sometimes people fall through the cracks and end up on the wrong side of some arbitrary statute, some, mandatory minimum, whatever the case may be. Right.
And then maybe it shouldn't be that way. Yeah.
And I think the core question of, is that just, right? Because I think what people are most interested in is justice, fairness. Like, that is unjust, that is unfair, whatever the case may be. And some people are like, hey, get over it. And other people are like, well, no, I mean, we should pay more attention, because you tell enough people to get over it and eventually those people revolt. So how do you create a system where there's release valves for these types of scenarios, So.
Yeah. And I think, we might, and I don't know if women are here now. I'd have to, ask my
two white dudes having this conversation. Two straight white dudes. Like, we should be in jail. Can't believe.
Well, no, I mean, I might ask my students this, because at my school, NCAA Division I, plenty of female athletes. I might ask them what they think about this. But I would imagine that having a category for women's sports means that you're going to have to exclude some people from joining those sports. Like, that's the whole idea. It's not open class. It's not anybody. We just want the fastest runner. It's like, no, we want the fastest runner within these parameters. So everyone that's not inside these parameters, we don't care that you're faster. It doesn't matter. We only want these.
Well, I don't know. We're talking about physiology. So we're not talking about, and this is where I kind of part company on some of this, is like, okay, the XY chromosome, I get, yes, scientifically that person was born biologically male, biologically female, whatever, 100%, right? But what you're really after in women's sport is presenting as female, right? Like, so like they have the physiology of a woman. I'm not saying that's the way it is. I'm saying we just said earlier, the purpose of having women's sports is so that women can compete against other women and have a category for that. So if you have let's say you had an XX person who presented male at birth and was raised as a man and had the physiology of a man, that person should compete against women. So that would be easy for people visually to go, no, that doesn't make sense. They don't belong in this ring. They belong over in that ring. That's the whole point. So like I'm saying, so we put this as a distinction, but when you flip it around, it's easy to see like, no, that's not what we're intending. So
let me, maybe this would help, right? So you can't think about them as like two equal spheres. Like, here's men over here, here's women over here. and the men exclude the women exclude the men. Ta-da!
Like
it's not like that. Yeah, because men have that Y chromosome and the testosterone, lung capacity, bone strength, all those other things give you advantages. So if you think about men's category, men is basically the open category as anybody. Like if someone's like, hey, I was born female, but I'm going to compete with those guys. They're like,
yeah, bring it on.
Come do it. Yeah, if you think you can, let's go.
Right.
So
dude has a problem with that. Let's go.
No, like you want to run.
Right.
Right. It's if you have, it's letting the people. Yeah, it's letting the advantaged, the biologically advantaged people compete against people without those biological advantages. So it's not about having the Y chromosome. It's about the advantages that come along with having the Y chromosome. Right. So that's, I think, the issue. And honestly, I think this is something maybe it's like sport to sport would make a difference. So so for example, in esports, they've decided it doesn't matter.
Right.
You're holding a controller, using a mouse.
But
the differences in
women have a fast twitch muscle advantage.
Basically the overall consensus is that this is not important.
Physics aren't involved.
Okay.
Go have at it.
And that's what that's within those organizations.
Right.
So there's no concern. Now, if you're looking at other sports, it just depends. I mean, a lot of times high school football, like especially in small towns, the kicker will often be female. And so like you'll have women that with the best kicker. A lot of times they're also like one of the captains of the soccer team or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that woman kicked the football, and they got the letter jacket, football, legit. They won that spot. They have that spot, and that's it. So I think it would depend on the sport, like where the advantage is and is it relevant. I would think boxing, probably there's a relevant advantage. I don't know. That's the thing, is I'm not a boxer.
Right.
I honestly don't know, but I'm kind of imagining there is.
This ain't shooting, right? Like, I mean, riflery probably doesn't matter, but boxing maybe.
So for riflery, they do. I was actually surprised that they have separate women and men's categories.
I was too.
And maybe that's just for tradition. Is like, are you worried that the gun's too heavy for her? Or it's like, it's fine. It's the same.
Even archery, I was thinking, like now with compound bows and the trigger mechanism, like why do you need separate categories for that? Maybe
it's just tradition. Yeah, but maybe there would be less of an issue. It's like, oh look, maybe like a trans woman joins the female archery team, and everyone's like, sweet, you high five her. So it doesn't matter, But it may matter in some sports, and so I really think it's kind of up to women, and for them to sort of work it out. I think within those sports themselves.
I think you really you hit the nail on the head. I think one of the points that was made by I'm trying to remember who it was some conservative. I was like, dude, that's actually a really good point. Is that if you're for women's rights, right? Then why would you be for allowing men to invade a woman's sports league? Like that doesn't make any sense. The whole reason we created this category of sports was because it didn't exist before, and if you wanted to play in it, you had to compete against men. That's the whole reason we did this, right? And I think it's almost like that kind of paradox with affirmative action back when that was a thing. It was like, well, or quotas, even I think there's DEI quotas and things like that. It's like, well, look, the whole point of this was that we wanted, red and yellow, black and white, like everybody has the same opportunity. You compete on merit. Like that was Martin Luther King, that's everybody else. But now you say that and you're a racist, right? So it's like, which I think is it's interesting how these things become the antithesis of what they intended to create. Like I was listening to a gay guy. He was on what's that show? Trigonometry. I think one of the guys is gay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And they're usually more right right-leaning commentary, but they're
good. Sort of right libertarian.
Right libertarian. They have very good guests on and really good conversations. But he was like, like, look, as a gay man, it's like you fight for years to acknowledge that, hey, a man has the right to love another man. He has the right to love another man. He has the right to marry that man. Has the right to adopt children, build a family with that man because it's the love of his life, or whatever the case may be.
Or maybe it's just inflationship.
Just because you're a man doesn't mean that you must be with a woman, right? And this is, and most people, this is a settled thing now. Except, okay, but now we're saying, with this trans movement, it's like, oh, you're experiencing gender dysphoria. You feel like you're, let's say, you're a female human, but you're believing that you're a man trapped inside that body, and so now you must change your physiology and whatever to embrace, all the physical traits of being a man, rather than saying, well, look, you're a woman, live whatever you want to love women, you want to live as a man, you would do whatever. Like, why not? Like, we fought for your right to be able to do that, and now it's almost like, oh, why are you prohibiting them to appear the way that they want to appear? And it's it's almost like the backwards. Like, are we going backwards here? Like, this is I thought we already figured this out. We spent decades figuring this out. It's interesting.
This is the malicious agreement, right? So for trans things, like, embrace the stereotype. Like, you think you want to act like a man, you don't want to act like a woman. Good, right? The stereotype for women is what makes you a woman. So you need to now embrace the other stereotype. You're like, ridiculous.
I think it's interesting that there's so many. There was I sent you a link earlier. The guys from Trigonometry had what was her name on that show? Big time.
Oh, yeah, you said to watch out. There was some harsh language.
Yeah, she dropped a few F-bombs in there, but what is her name here? Brianna Wu, and she's the executive director of Rebellion PAC, and huge liberal activist. And she got canceled for I'm trying to remember what she got canceled for, but and she's like, this is crazy. Like, I fought for your right to have rights, and now I'm pointing out, well, wait a minute, this is going too far this way, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, now and she was telling the Trigonometry guys, she goes, I used to talk about you guys and be like, oh, this is outrageous, I can't believe this is so fringe, like, they're making this a thing, it's not really a thing. And she goes, and now it's being done to me. And I'm like, wait a minute, those guys were right, this is nuts. And
well, that's always the beauty of censorship. It's like, as long as you're the one censoring others, it's fun,
right? And it's
until it's you.
What's that old quote about how they came for these people and they came for those people, and I didn't object because I wasn't one of them, and then they came for me and there was nobody left to speak for me. I was like, that is really but that's also why, and people have asked me repeatedly, like, oh, you still give the edge to Trump in this election? I'm like, absolutely, because people are just fed up with that kind of thing. And we'll see. But people are fed up with that kind of thing. And I don't think, going back to our original topic of conversation, I don't think this VP pick helps her at all in that area. So anyway, we'll time will tell.
90 days. We'll find out.
Is that all it is?
Well,
90 days?
We'll find out in January sometime once they stop the steal.
Right. Yeah, dude.
We're not going to find out the day of. Don't worry about that. That's not happening.
Yeah. Oh man, that's it's going to be. Get your video cameras out. Get your bunker ready. It's about to get.
Stock up. Plant a garden.
I was. We don't have time to talk about it today, but maybe next week. We got to talk about simulation theory and some of these other things I've been sending you, because I'm fascinated with this topic, and it's some of the not even the philosophy I've been aware of for a while, but the mathematics behind it, the science behind it, I was not. And so I hope Did you have time to watch any of those things?
Well, I did. I watched the one that you sent, but I haven't read the article yet, the one that the peer-reviewed one on the math. So hopefully I have enough brain power to understand that one.
You won't. I mean, you won't, because some of the math is just. But the essence of it is basically that well, I don't want to get into it because
we'll look at it next week.
Yeah, it'll be a huge.
We'll look at it next week.
But for those of you watch it, tune in next week because it'll be wild. It'll be wild.
It always is.
Yeah, always is. All right, brother. Appreciate you being on, man. Have a great rest of your day.
See you soon.